God purify what I prioritize. Turn my heart to you. Give me more than human love. Human love.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the Replicant Report. I am your host Keith Giles. We are streaming live. If you are lucky enough to be listening to us live, let me. There we go. Drop the theme song. By the way, which I don't think I've mentioned enough. The theme song is by my son David Giles, recording under the name TV is Neat. The song is called Human Love. You can check that out. I believe it's on Bandcamp under TV is Neat. So very grateful for that. I love that song. So hey, we're getting near the end of the year. It's almost Thanksgiving this week as I'm recording this, and close enough to the end of the year that I think it's safe to say that I could go ahead and let you know what my top 20 books of 2025 are. Now, these are books that I read this year. They are not books that released, except for maybe two of them that released this year. Most of these books released much older, because usually when I'm reading science fiction, honestly, I much prefer like what I call vintage sci-fi. It's really like science fiction from the 60s, 70s, maybe the 80s, 90s. But I read very little in modern fiction, and when I do read modern science fiction, it's got to come really well, recommended, have great reviews, and be something. So some of those kinds of books have shown up on my previous top 10 or top 20 lists. Let me just go back. If I can look at the list that I did last year. Yeah, so my best books of last year, of 2024, my number one was The Water Knife, which was written fairly recently, I think in the last couple of years. This Is How You Lose the Time War, which I think had come out in 2024. And then I read, I also had as my number 4 book, There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. And that book has just been re-released this year. It was self-published, I think, a couple of years ago. So, I did have at the top of my list several books that were quote-unquote new. I also had Dark Matter from Blake Crouch on my top 20 list last year. So this year, I'm just looking, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 books that are quote unquote either came out this year, last year, or within the last 4 or 5 years. The majority of the books I'm going to talk about on my top 20 list are books that are as old as I am, or a little younger than me, but not by much. Okay, so I'm just going to go backwards down the list, starting at the top, or starting at the bottom, I should say, and working my way to number 1. You guys know how top 10 lists work, right? Okay, so I'm sure you know what we're talking about here. So just in case anybody in the is watching live and they want to leave a comment or something, I will look at my comments as well. All right, so I should say the bottom of the list really, and you're going to see a lot of these on the bottom are similar. So this is Barry Malzberg's Revelations. This is a reprint from Anti-Oedipus Press, who are some friends of mine. Love these guys. They put out some great stuff. They had a wonderful relationship with Barry Malzberg before he died, which was only, I think, last year. And they've been in the process of reprinting some of his best, really some of his best books. And Revelations is at the bottom for me. It's okay. It reminds me a bit of Network, the 1970s film. So it's about a TV presenter who's like super popular, and just the ways that the media influences society and all that kind of thing. I liked it, but not as much as I like some of these other books. Another Another one near the bottom of my top 20 list, but also by Barry Malzberg, Horowitz's World. I'm a huge Barry Malzberg fan, by the way. I have started sort of obsessively collecting a lot of Barry Malzberg's work only in the last couple of years, because I just like really this year, maybe the end of last year, discovered Barry Malzberg, and I'm a huge fan. But at the same time, as I'm reading more of Barry Malzberg's work, what I'm noticing is he does tend to have a bit of a pattern. And in some of the other books that I'm reading lately, even if it's a good book, he's a good writer, it's an interesting book. I would knock it down a few pegs if it continues to sort of like follow those repeatable patterns. And there's going to be some others I'm going to talk about in my list that score a little higher, simply because they break that pattern. And I liked it because it was he wasn't following that same kind of predictable pattern. Okay. Yet another Barry Malzberg book. I read a lot of Barry Malzberg this year. The Gamesman. I really like this one a lot. What also is really interesting is this book is dedicated to Philip K. Dick. And so that's kind of cool. I think one of Philip K. Dick's novels inspired, I think The Game Players of Titan by Philip K. Dick inspired Barry Malzberg to write this book. I did like this. It did break the pattern a little bit. I wasn't entirely always sure what was going on, but in a good way, you know what I mean? Where like it's keeping you guessing and thinking of what's really going on here. It's sort of a dystopian future where people play these kind of arbitrary, weird games, and they all have their roles. So there's the gamesman, the person that sort of runs the game. There's like a gamekeeper or someone who's sort of like the overseer, and there's the players in the game who are at the whim of the sort of the masters of the game that are controlling what's going on. But to sort of advance in society, or even to survive, you have to do well in these games. So it was interesting. I liked it better than some of the other ones that I had read. Okay, so now we're getting into the list. This is technically this is a top 21 list. So Revelations was 21, Horowitz's World was 20, The Gamesman was 19. This is my number 18 book that I read this year, The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. Now, I have heard nothing but rave reviews from people about Gene Wolfe, specifically about this series, The Shadow of the Torturer. I think it's the Book of the New Sun series. I went out and bought the whole thing, the whole series. The first one have router, so it's not using Wi-Fi. So hopefully everyone can hear me. Hope there's no issues. I'm going to keep going. Anyway, so and then there's, I think, a fifth book that's called The Book of the New Sun. So I have that one as well, right? So I think that's how it works. I think there's 4 books, and then there's a fifth book. And then I think even after that, there are more books that he wrote, The Earth of the New Sun or something like that. Anyway, it's a big, long series. I've only read this one, the first one in the series. I will say it did not live up to the hype for me. It's one of these things where like you're reading it, and in the beginning it really reads like a sort of a fantasy novel. I'm not a huge fan of fantasy. The more you read it, there are clues that actually it's not fantasy in the sense that it's another planet or it's about sword and sorcery, but it's actually a science fiction dystopian future where far, far in the future, where the sun is sort of dying. And, there's these sort of people that still use some technology, but they're kind of treated like they're wizards or something because they're, they can use this magic technology kind of a thing. There's ruined buildings with, these lost books that are collected, which of course are remnants of the advanced society before it collapsed and all that kind of thing. So, that makes it a little bit more interesting to me as someone who's a fan of science fiction, but overall, I didn't come away feeling very satisfied at the end of this book. I will eventually read the second book and probably I'll eventually get around to reading this entire cycle of books. But if this book had really, floored me, if I had finished it and been like, whoa, that was awesome, then I probably would have just kept reading the series. But unfortunately, because it didn't do that, I'm going to take a bit of a break from that for now. I have so many books, by the way. I could probably do a video. Maybe I'll do this one of my next videos. Of just a stack of books on my to be read pile. I've had some amazing book hauls lately, and I have so many really great, cool books I am so excited to dig into. But of course, I can only read one at a time. But it would be kind of cool just to say, like, kind of a sneak peek of like, hey, here's what's on my to be read list next to my bed, and a pile of books next to my bed, because there's some cool stuff in there. All right, so moving on. This book snuck in. Initially, it wasn't on my list, but then I sort of had forgotten that I had read it. But then I went and put it back on the list because it's a book that I think is worth recommending. So the book is by Jodi Scott. She is a fascinating author in her own right. The book is called Passing for Human. Speaking of recommendations, it has a recommendation on the cover by Barry Malzberg, a Swiftian satire of the most ferocious power. And it is fantastic as a satire. And if you can read it and really kind of be in that mood for something lighthearted and read it, like enjoy the commentary that it's making on society, on the media, on entertainment, on politics. It's written from the perspective of a woman who is an alien. She's actually a dolphin, not a dolphin, but a dolphin-like alien from a planet that's mostly water. And her species comes to Earth to kind of study us, and they can take on human form. So they basically can transfer their consciousness into any body they want, and they fashion bodies. And so, for example, some of the bodies are like Emma Peel from the Avengers TV series, or, General George Patton, Abraham Lincoln, Heidi's grandfather from the Shirley Temple Heidi movie. It's etc. So it's like, if I just read the back cover, okay. Passing for Human, or Who Isn't Afraid of Virginia Woolf, starring Benaroya, a 36-foot extraterrestrial dolphin, in the role of Brenda Starr, Emma Peel, Mary Worth, Virginia Woolf, and Happy New Guinea Hoptoad, with an all-star cast including Abraham Lincoln, Jennison the Kansas Jayhawker, Heidi's grandfather, General George Patton, the Los Angeles Police Department, the Prince of Darkness, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Ancient Egypt, the Isle of Capri, Interstellar Station 8, 4 billion newly created people, and several hundred Richard Nixons. Yeah, it's cover art, by the way. This edition that I have is one of my all-time favorite science fiction cover artist, Bob Pepper. That's another reason I really treasure this book. It was really great. So, yeah, interesting book. I do recommend it. And apparently she's written, like, I think there's even maybe a trilogy. This is the first book in the trilogy. I don't own, or I haven't read the other books, but it might be worth checking out if you enjoy that one. Okay. Okay. Next, this is number 16. The book is Under the Skin. Now, this is the book that the film with Scarlett Johansson is based on, of the same title, Under the Skin. I really loved the movie. It's one of my all-time favorite science fiction films. I think it's genius. It's a genius film. And the book, I would say the first third of the book does a wonderful job of, it's weird to talk about it in this way because I know the book came first, right? But what the movie does well is it maintains a feeling of mystery. It doesn't really explicitly tell you who this person is, the main character, why they're here, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and all of that, right? And you are for the entire movie, you're just completely trying to solve this mystery, and so it holds your attention, at least hold my attention, by sort of playing with this mystery box idea, right? And maintaining the mystery box so that you don't get frustrated, you don't give up, but you stick with it to the very end. The first third of the book, the novel that the film is based on, does that, and it does it beautifully. And I think where the book fails, at least for me, is that it reveals way too much. By the middle part of the book, you know the answers to all of those questions, and for me, they're not satisfying answers to the question. My own imagination was much more interesting and satisfying than the answers to those mysteries. And so anyway, it was an enjoyable book. It's one of those things where I was talking to my family about it. Like, if I had never seen the movie, and this is for you, if you've never seen the film, before you watch the film, read the book. I think you'll enjoy the book much better if you don't have any context whatsoever from the movie. And then, whether you like the book or not, then go watch the movie, because the movie is way, way better. And even if you don't like the book, you will. I think you'll really love the movie. Okay, number 15 on my list is a book called Doggerland by Ben Smith. This book I only read. I would have never in a million years I wouldn't even known about this book. But Matt from Bookpilled, who's a booktuber that I follow, one of the only people that I support on Patreon, just so I can watch all of his review videos for science fiction. He's kind of my go-to guy. Really, I've learned a lot from him and followed a lot of great authors and found a lot of great science fiction books because of Matt. And so when Matt recommends a book like this, and Matt did so very strongly recommended this book, I just kind of went out immediately and purchased the book on eBay and read it. However, I got to say, Matt, I didn't love it as much as you did. I'm sorry to say. It's good, but I don't think it's great. And I don't know, it's just the story didn't grab me. The mystery kind of the story didn't engage me. It just didn't do it for me overall. It's okay. That's why it's number 15 on my list. Number 14. Now we're getting into the masters here. Speaking of masters, this is the SF Masterworks edition. Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. They're brothers. They're Soviet authors. They're mostly known for Roadside Picnic, which is still, having read several of their books, it's still by far, Roadside Picnic is their greatest novel, in my opinion. I have many other books of theirs that I have to read, but I can't imagine that one of them is suddenly better than Roadside Picnic and no one's mentioned it yet, or even suggested it. But Snail on the Slope was actually very good. I really did enjoy it. And there's been several other books that I've tried to read and given up on, like Hard to Be a God, which people have said is fantastic. I started it and I kind of put it aside. It didn't grab me. I might come back to it later and try to finish it. But this one I did start to read and I finished it. And The Snail on the Slope is a really interesting book about this forest. I believe it's on another planet, and humans have found this forest, and it's this kind of a mysterious, almost magical forest in a way. Things are happening that we don't understand. And there's really, you're following two characters in the book. One is a human character who lives in the forest. I think sort of accidentally ended up in the forest and is trying to get out of it. And another human character who is on the outside of the forest. He's on the fringes, where there's a little village there, like a scientific village, and they're supposed to be studying the forest, and he wants to get into the forest. So it's fascinating. It kind of alternates between these two characters. And sometimes it's the character who's outside the forest and hates it and wants to get inside the forest because he sees it as magical and meaningful and profound. And then it'll alternate to another chapter told from the perspective of a human inside the forest who finds it maddening and insane and wants to escape it. So it's really great. And with a lot of their stuff, there's a lot of social commentary going on. I'm not sure I'm getting all of it because, of course, I did not grow up in Soviet Russia in the 60s or 70s, whatever. And so, but it's really good. It's a very good book. Just checking. So it was written in 1968, published in 1968. So, but anyway, it's there's enough here to chew on and to get you thinking. And those are my favorite kind of books that make you think. Speaking of that, number 13 is a book, Ice, by Anna Kavan. And it's one of these books where, I'll read from the back of the book. J.G. Ballard says, few contemporary novelists could match the intensity of her vision. Doris Lessing says there is nothing else like it. It's called a masterpiece of literary science fiction, conjuring a dazzling and haunting vision of the end of the world. And it is a book that it's very dreamlike. So Anna Kavan, the author, will be describing something from the point of view of the main character, and then it'll suddenly shift into almost this poetic dreamlike kind of stream of consciousness, and then take us somewhere else all of a sudden, like, how do we get here? And it does that often, and it kind of throws you off a little bit, but it is interesting. It's sort of that in itself is saying something about the world that this book is set in, and the mindset of the main character, who's not a very reliable narrator at all. And you're sometimes not sure, are they the good guy? Are they the bad guy? Are they out of their mind? Are they dreaming this, hallucinating this? Or is it really happening? And these hallucinations and dreams are just their way of coping with making sense of what's happening to them. I'll read a little bit also in the back cover of the description. In a frozen apocalyptic landscape, destruction abounds, great walls of ice overrun the world, and secretive governments vie for control. Against this surreal yet eerily familiar broken world, an unnamed narrator embarks on a hallucinatory quest for a strange and elusive glass girl with silver hair. He crosses icy seas and frozen plains, searching ruined towns and ransacked rooms, desperate to free her from the grips of a tyrant known only as the Warden, and save her before ice closes all around. I'm going to stop there because that's the basics of it, but so much more happens in the book. But interesting book. It's one of these ones where, again, it was recommended by Matt from Bookpilled, and I would have probably never even have known it existed apart from Matt mentioning it. But it's a Penguin classic, so if you're interested in science fiction, I think it's one of those books you probably should check it out. I'm going to make room here on my desk as I'm going through. I need to be able to put these books down somewhere. Okay, so next on the list is number 12. This is by Christopher Priest. It's called The Glamour. Christopher Priest is also a new author for me that I discovered this year. Again, another booktuber, the Outlaw Bookseller on YouTube. He was the first one to mention Christopher Priest. He recommended this book and one other book of Christopher Priest to start with. I have read both of those books. This one is my number 12 of the year. I enjoyed it. It was very good. There are apparently multiple versions of the book. This is not the one that the Outlaw Bookseller, recommended. That version, which I think is the first printing, is very expensive and hard to find. So I went with this one. Apparently they all have slightly different endings. But I think I got enough of the gist. You know what I mean? I think I get what's happening, what's going on, the characters. Again, it's one of these things where the less you know going into it, the better. I will caution you, if you do pick up this book and begin to read it, it is a great sort of a mind-bending kind of a novel. But let me just tell you, the mind-bending part won't come until you're more than halfway through the book. So about the first half of the book, it's just going to feel like a pretty normal, boring story about this guy. I mean, it's interesting in the sense of these things are happening to him, and he's in an accident, and someone dies, and he's lost his memory, and they're trying to get it back, and they're using hypnosis. Okay, so it's interesting, but there's no science fiction element to it, and you're sort of like, I thought this was supposed to be a mind-bending kind of sci-fi novel. It doesn't feel like a mind-bending sci-fi novel. But if you stick with it, and you get beyond that halfway point, and then you start to see what is going on, or at least what you think is going on. And there are different twists and turns all through this book to the very last paragraph. I would say it's very rewarding. I really did enjoy this book, and I do recommend it for anyone that likes that kind of like mind-bending sci-fi stuff. That's kind of my favorite stuff. Did you like Inception? You'll like this book, right? Did you like Tenet or Memento? You'll like this book. And I mentioned those films also. I should probably also mention that Christopher Priest is the author of The Prestige, also a film directed by the same director of Tenet and Christopher Nolan. So there's a bit of a connection there. Anyway, yeah, that was a very good one. I enjoyed it, and I'm now a fan of Christopher Priest, and I picked up a few of his books, and I think the only one I have yet to read by Christopher Priest so far, there might be one novel and one short story collection. So I'm curious about jumping into his short stories to see how they compare to his novels. Okay, this is my number 11, and then after this, we're getting into the very top 10 books of the year. Ready? Okay, this is number 11. D.G. Compton's The Unsleeping Eye. Yes, another book recommended by Matt from Book Build. Thank you, Matt. There are two versions of this book. I accidentally bought the wrong version, I think. It was published under a different title. I think it's called what's it called? It's something about Catherine Morton-Hoe, whatever. It's not a very interesting title. But then after I bought that version, I ran across this, which is a DAW science fiction paperback, which I can never resist, with the Unsleeping Eye, which is a much cooler title and a much cooler cover. And it's a DAW science fiction. This is book number 102 in the DAW series. Can never resist those yellow spines. So the interesting thing about this book, kind of similar, I think it's a similar criticism or a comment to the previous book, The Glamour. The setup for the book is really cool. I'm going to read the back. The man with the TV eyes. Catherine Morton-Hoe was going to die. By the way, this book is set in a future world where we have pretty much eliminated all diseases. So people live very long lives. And so there's some weird, strange virus or disease, very rare, that Catherine Morton-Hoe, this character, comes down with, and her doctor tells her, that he can't believe it, but she has only a few days to live. And so she becomes overnight sort of like an anomaly, a star, right? A sensation. And all these media outlets want to, it's like, there's a lot of like reality television, and they want to get the rights to film her story, to document her, because everybody wants to know, who is she and how did this happen and what's it like to die young, because no one dies young in this future. And so I'm continuing to read from the back of the back cover. It was to be on a television program of the highest rating. The crisis and problems of the closing years of the 20th century had forced the entertainment industry to ever escalating needs to hold its audiences, and fatal illness, once so common, had become such a rarity that Catherine's doom was a magnet for all eyes. So there's a guy named Roddy who works for this large television company. He has his eyes surgically replaced with these eyes that are cybernetic eyes, that everything he sees is being broadcast on a television signal. And so he's a walking camera. And he's seeing and recording everything. So he gets close to her. She doesn't know that he works for this television company. And he is secretly filming her. And her story is sort of documentary style, being cut and edited in real time and broadcast as a television show, as she is trying to deal with, the last few days of her life. Anyway, so like the same kind of, criticism to the previous book, The Glamour, where it's a great setup, right? That sounds really cool. Roddy, the guy with the eyes, when that's the whole point of The Unsleeping Eye, right? Is this reporter with these eyes who's filming everything. He doesn't even meet her in person till like more than halfway through the book. And so very little of the book is really even their relationship and their interactions and what he's filming and any of that. And that was a bit frustrating to me as a reader. I mean, this was the promise of the cover. This is the promise of the back cover. This is the concept. Let's just get into that. And instead it spends a ton of time on on Catherine Mortenho, just what she's going through separately, Roddy and his life and his personal life and dealing with the networks and all that stuff, again, separately, before they ever meet each other. And that's kind of frustrating to me. Once they got together, it was interesting, but I just took way too long. All right, here we go. Number 10. This is my first ever book by this author, Robert Silverberg. And if you follow vintage sci-fi, he's a very big name. He's written tons of books. He wrote the Magic Chronicles, Lord Valentine's Castle, and some many other books. This is my very first one. Again, this book was recommended, yes, by probably Matt on BookBuild or some other booktube, channel that I follow. So again, I was curious about Silverberg, like, where do I start? And this was the book as sort of a standalone book. It's not part of a series or anything, and it's a pure sci-fi idea that was interesting to me. So basically, it's a story about in the future, as overpopulation was a problem right near the end of the 20th century, and the way we solved the problem was instead of building, having cities sprawl out, the sprawl, where they just kind of take over real estate until they're one big massive city, mega city. Instead, they start building these massive skyscrapers that are like 500, 700 stories tall. And every floor is a city. And hundreds of thousands of people live on a single floor, but they're super modern and everything they need is there. So they never have to leave the building. And there's a lot of very strange rules and laws that have been passed in order to keep the peace. Sexual ethics and morals have been loosened to deal with the sort of the frustrations of being confined together in these spaces and things like that. So, but it's really fascinating. I really like this book. To be honest, I'm only about halfway through it, but I can tell you right now, I'm loving it so far, and so I know it's going to be. I'm putting it right now at number 10. Maybe when I finish it, it'll move up a little bit on my final list, but for now, it's number 10, and I'm really loving it. And if I can find other Robert Silverberg books that are similar in tone and content, I might be interested in reading some more Silverberg. I'm not big on fantasy, and I don't want to jump into a big long series. So, okay, number 9, another Arkady and Boris Strugatsky book. This is The Doomed City. It's kind of a thick book. I think the other one was pretty thick as well, but this one I think is a little thicker. This was an interesting one. I did like it better than The Snail on the Slope. Basically, it's a book about a city with an artificial sun. We don't know really where the city is. It doesn't feel like it's really on Earth because, again, the sun is artificial. So where is this city located and what planet are they on? Are they on Earth? Are they in some kind of a simulation? Are they on, are they inside of a giant ship that's simulating a planet? The people there are from different points in time in Earth history and from different nations and countries, and they speak different languages. So we have a soldier from World War II with somebody from the Civil War in America, and then somebody from Australia, and then somebody from France, and it's just people sort of gathered from across time on planet Earth, and they've all been dropped into this city, and they can't sort of escape the city. And you're following a crew of characters, I think there's like 5 different characters, as they are sort of slowly advancing in the echelon. So they begin at the very bottom. At the beginning, they're garbage collectors. By the end, they're basically lords and barons, and they have power and authority over other people. And you get to see how this changes their character, how they change from when they are, peasants and they're nobodies and they're on the bottom versus when they have a little more influence and authority, when they kind of move to middle class, then when they own some property, then when they have political and military power, and how this kind of changes them, and sort of also what's going on behind the scenes, like who put this together and why. They keep calling it the experiment, and so again, what's the point of the experiment? Who's doing the experiment and all that? So yeah, it's interesting. Really, really good book. I recommend that one. I liked it a lot. Okay, number 8. And this is a really interesting book. Again, also recommended from my favorite booktubers. It's by Olga Robin. Now, this is a more recent book. It's called The Employees. Let me see when this came out. It's called A Workplace Novel of the 22nd Century. This was published in 2020, so fairly new. It's got endorsements from Jeff Vandermeer, who wrote the, what's that series? Annihilation series. Yeah, so here's what's interesting about it. Every chapter it's like you're reading transcripts from an HR department who is interviewing different employees, but all the employees all live and work on a generation ship that's out there in space. And of course, it's being run by some corporate entity. And they find these alien artifacts, these alien creatures. Some are plants, some are like more simple kind of animals, at least as far as they know. But you sort of, as you're reading the transcripts of these interviews with all these different unnamed employees, you start picking up these patterns, that something weird might be going on, that these animals, plants, artifacts, or whatever are having strange, odd effects on the crew. And yeah, I probably shouldn't say more than that. And it's also, they're told out of order. So they're numbered like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but they're not told, they're not assembled in that order. So like, the first one you read is, let's say, statement number 4. And the second statement is statement number 12. And then the third is number 6, then number 2, then number 14, then number 15, then 11, then 13. It just jumps. But by jumping around in time, and changing characters all the time, you can slowly kind of put the puzzle pieces together. It was really good. Very poetic. The author, Olga Robin, is a Danish novelist and poet. And so it's very poetic in that sense. Very fascinating topic, and interesting the way it was written, the style it was written in, as well as the language. So I really enjoyed that book. Number 7, our good friend Barry Malzberg, In the Enclosure. I love this cover, by the way. Really like that cover. And let's see, this was published in 1973. Don't think it says the name of the artist who did that cover. It does not. Although it says it was designed by Leila M. Culhane. So anyway, this is one of the Barry Malzberg books that breaks his pattern, which I was getting a little tired of, honestly. So when I read this one, I was just really pleasantly surprised that this novel broke his pattern, that he just falls into, right? Malzberg wrote a ton of books and wrote them very quickly. And I obviously, if you're trying to write a lot of novels and you're trying to write them very quickly, it helps to have a formula, right, or a pattern. And so that's great if you're Barry Malzberg and you want to kick out a bunch of books. It's not so great if you're a reader and you're getting tired of that same pattern over and over and over again. This one broke the pattern and was a very enjoyable book. According to the back, escape is all that queer, Quuir, which the publishing company I run is Quire, Quoir. So it's kind of interesting. There was a similar name. I guess it's queer. Escape is all that Queer thinks about. Escape from the enclosure on Earth. Escape from the endless interrogations. Queer's memories have been burned out. All he knows is that he must give scientific data to humans whenever they ask for it. And interesting that the character's name is Queer. Malzberg does deal with a lot of those kinds of themes in all of his books that I've read so far. You have typically male characters who, one way or another, either feel like they might be bisexual or have homosexual thoughts. And so, this book doesn't go down that road too deep. It's not like, an allegory or anything like that, but it is an allegory in the sense of just, again, society and humanity, feeling the need to escape from something. And then, yes, you can escape from something, but from what to what, right? Sort of from the frying pan into the fire. How do you know that what you're escaping isn't better than what you might escape into, or vice versa? Anyway, this book was really good. Really, I do recommend this book. Yeah. All right, number 6. And this is a book I just finished recently. And I'll be honest, I bought the book mostly because I was obsessed with the cover. Oh my gosh, I really love this cover art. And this is an author that I've heard good things about, but I think this is probably the first book I've read by this author. I have others in a stack that I'm going to get to eventually. And this author is very prolific, but I'm glad this was the first of their books that I read. I really enjoyed it. It's called The Sheep Look Up. And if you're watching this on video, look at that cover. I just love that cover. It's a pretty thick book. And it's also very interesting the way it's written, the style of in which it's written. It's almost like flipping channels on a TV, It's just like you drop in the middle of something. Sometimes it is an actual television broadcast or a press conference, or just boom, the next scene with the next character. He doesn't pick, he doesn't pick like a main character and follow that main character throughout the story. What he does, and it kind of gets annoying a little bit in the beginning, of like he's constantly introducing new characters. Like it feels like the first 10 chapters, there's 10 different characters. But then he'll come back to some of those characters later on and then slowly begin to weave all their stories together, which is common nowadays. I'm sure at the time that was probably pretty, groundbreaking, avant-garde kind of writing. But really good, really fascinating. Sort of about America near the end, like America going through the final throes of ecological collapse, financial collapse, food instability, a lot of disease, a lot of pandemics, and different people in different places of society trying to survive this and navigate this and make sense of it. And some of them trying to capitalize on it, to make money on it as well. So it's just it's a fascinating sort of slice of the human condition and the human experience, with the setting of pretty much the end of the world as we know it. So really good. And apparently this is the second book. I believe it is intended to be, if not a literal, that a spiritual sequel to his book, Stand on Zanzibar. At least that's what it says on the cover. The sequel to the author's Hugo Award-winning Stand on Zanzibar is an important novel, perhaps the most important speculative novel of the year. And I would agree. Very much enjoyed this book. That's my number 6. Over time, I could see moving this one up a little bit because I think it's got some staying power. But I do recommend this book. I should also say something about this. I nearly put this book down in the first couple of chapters because there was some racist kind of language going on. And I wasn't sure, like, is this book written by a racist, or is this book about racism? And by the end of the book, well, as I continued to read the book, I began to feel like he was sort of reporting on characters who were racist and how their racism played into, their character and sort of the state of the world the way it is. Also keeping in mind that he wrote this at a time when probably there was a lot going on with, civil rights movements and things like that. And from his perspective, sort of projecting how those race riots and race relations and racial tensions could sort of reach a climax in the future. So anyway, I would just say, yeah, if you're reading along at the beginning and you come across some of those things and you're like, oh, I don't know, I would say stick with it because I think it's worth it. And he goes some really good places with the book. Okay, number 5. This is my top 5, guys. Christopher Priest again. This is The Inverted World. And this, my friends, not the glamour, this book. I have read now, I think 4 or 5 different Christopher Priest books, novels so far. This is it. This is the best one. You need to read this one. if you're curious about Christopher Priest and you've not read any of his stuff, start here. This is the good one. Gosh, again, I don't even know what to say. It's also a novel about a city. It's a city that is moving. So the entire city is sort of like built on these massive sort of tank treads, and it's traveling slowly but surely across the landscape. And there are teams of people who have to constantly sort of make way, cut down forests and build bridges over the water and all this kind of stuff. But the reason why it's moving is that's the question mark, right? And it's a bit of a mystery as you're reading. Like, first of all, why is the city moving? Why do they have to move? Why is the society set up the way it is? It's fascinating. This was talk about a mind-bending novel. This, my friends, is a mind-bending novel, and I love mind-bending novels. This was a very good, very satisfying science fiction novel. It's one of the kind of a novel where, and I feel this way about The Sheep Look Up as well. And probably every book I'm going to cover from here on out. We're like, the thing that happens for me anyway, when I read a really great science fiction novel and I finish it, there's a bit of a sadness that it's over, but then there's also a bit of a challenge of like, I want to read something that's that good. I don't want to just read another science fiction novel that's just going to be okay, because I just finished reading something that was awesome. And so it, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just not satisfied. That's why a lot of books I probably started and then set them aside and nah, that's not it. And I went to another one because I'm sort of chasing that same level of wow that I got from a book like this. And so it kind of ruins me for other science fiction books, if what I'm saying. But yeah, this one, yeah, I would love to read anything that came close to something like The Inverted World. Fantastic. Okay, now this one is also really great. Was really a great emotional novel. I'm just going to talk about it quickly. So it's called The Dog Stars. The author's name is Peter Heller. It was a national bestseller, one of the best books of the year, according to the Atlantic and the San Francisco Chronicle. It's very similar to Cormac McCarthy's The Road, and you'll see people on the cover and on the back cover comparing this book to that book. This was published in 2012. It's one of these things. So similar to The Road, it's very beautifully written. The prose is beautiful, very easy to read. Characters that you will immediately fall in love with and enjoy spending time with. And at the end of the book, when you have to end the book and put it down, you will be very sad that you don't get to spend more time with them. I wish there was a sequel to this book, and I'd love to know what happens to these characters next, because I think I would just love to read it. It was just enjoyable to be in this world and to spend time with them. Essentially, this is a book about a pandemic that kills everyone. There's a very few people left alive, and as with most sort of pandemic, disaster, dystopian, even like zombie, stories, it's other people you need to be afraid of. When you come up on other people, can you trust them? And no, the answer is no, you should not trust them, and you should shoot first and ask questions later. The two main characters in the book, one of them is a pilot, and so the pilot and his dog, he and another guy are holed up on a small private airport, and they've fortified it, and they have landmines and trip wires and all kinds of stuff to protect themselves from people that try to constantly come in and steal from them and kill them, whatever, take what they have. But then randomly, the main character will get in his small little Cessna plane and fly around and survey the area and find fuel and food and water and other things that they need, and go on these kind of expeditions to kind of search for things. But of course, sometimes that gets dangerous because you accidentally run into people and you're not sure you're going to be able to make it home and all that kind of stuff. So great story, beautifully, emotionally well-written story. I think I did cry at least once in reading this. This book was highly recommended. Very, very good. I think it would make a great film, similar to The Road, if the right person made that film. It'd be great. Okay, now, this is number 3 My number 3 best novel that I read this year is a book that I'm proud to say that I also got to publish as the publisher with Crowd Publishing. And I also personally edited this book and went through it with the author myself. The author is my friend David Agranoff. The book is Great America in Dead World. And oh my gosh, is this book amazing. So Great American Dead World is an experimental satire patterned after the writing formula used by the late science fiction author Philip K. Dick. I'm reading from the back cover. Agranoff's novel imagines a future dystopian world where, under the rule of President Supreme, global temperatures are on the rise and the ultra-wealthy plug into a virtual heaven while the working class keep them alive in their pods. But when the global food supply begins to run out, what will keep Great America from devouring itself? This is such a good book, guys. And I'm not saying that, again, just because David Agranoff is my friend. And I'm not saying that just because Quar published it. I'm saying it's because it's a great novel is the reason Quar published it. When David even just told me the pitch for this book, we were talking probably like a year ago, and David pitched me the idea for this book. I immediately was like, I want to publish that book. Well, first I thought I want to read that book. And then he sent it to me and I read it and I'm like, oh God, please let Quar publish this book. It is so, so good, my friends. Very, very, very good. Love this book so, so much. Very highly recommended. It's funny, it's thought-provoking, and it does feel like reading a Philip K. Dick book, my favorite science fiction author. It feels like reading a science fiction book. If Philip K. Dick hadn't died in 84, then this is the book he would have written if he was still alive today. And David Agranoff did a great job. Hats off to you, my friend. Very well written, very funny, thoughtful, insightful, very much in the vein of Philip K. Dick, playing with some important questions about reality and humanity and all that. So love that book, highly recommend it. Okay, number 2 on my list, also a book that came out recently. I'm looking, when did this come out? 2024. So this came out last year, but I did not read it until early this year. Skinship by my friend James Reich. This is a book I wished I had published. Also by Anti-Oedipus Press. God bless those guys. This is a great science fiction novel. It's about a generation ship. And that's probably all I should say about it for this video. But I will say what makes this book so fantastic is that James Reich is a master. His prose is like nothing I've ever read. But I want to read everything this guy writes because he is such a talented, gifted, brilliant writer. Reading this book was a joy. And sometimes I would just read as an author, as a writer, I would read almost every paragraph, every chapter. And in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, damn, I wish I could write like this. I know I probably could never write like this. But damn, it's good. Really good. So way to go, James. Fantastic book. Highly recommended. Skinship. Buy it, read it, treasure it. It's a keeper. It's a very, very good book. That's my number 2. And my number 1 best novel, science fiction novel that I read this year is again by Barry Malzberg. This is Beyond Apollo. Yet another book this is the first Barry Malzberg book that I ever read. And I will say that as I was reading it, every chapter of my mind was blown. I would read a chapter and be like, whoa, and then turn the page and start reading the next chapter and be like, wow. In fact, I was so obsessed with the genius of Barry Malzberg in the way this book is constructed that I literally opened, after I finished the book, I opened up a spreadsheet and I tried to map out what Barry was doing structurally and like how he constructed the book, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, just to visually look at it and really marvel at his mind. Like how did he even think of writing a book to tell the story that he's telling, to decide to tell it the way he told it. wow. And at the time, I was working on writing a science fiction novel of my own, and was struggling, to be honest, with writing that novel. I'm still writing it, to be honest. Um, but after reading Beyond Apollo, it really gave me so much creative freedom and excitement of like, oh wow, I can really do whatever I want. I can really do anything. I can do this because Barry Malzberg, in this book, look what Barry Malzberg did. I mean, I can't believe that what he pulled off in this book. He was able to just transition and shift from voices and perspectives and tone and style in such fluid, effortless, graceful ways. Yeah, it just gave me permission to do the same. Like, okay, I'm going to do that too. I'm going to give myself that permission as well to be just as audacious and creative and unpredictable as I feel like I need to be. It really just gave me permission to not worry about what the reader might think, not worry about whether what I'm doing is quote unquote the right way, or following certain conventions of, oh, I'm telling a science fiction story, so I have to do this and I have to do that, and I have to have these characters and I have to have these kind of scenes. And like, no, I mean, in Beyond Apollo, I felt like Barry Malzberg just said, he just took a hammer to all those expectations and blew them up. And it was very refreshing, very empowering for me as an author, and was very refreshing as a reader of science fiction, because I read a lot of science fiction, as you can tell, and it's just so exciting to read a book by someone like Barry Malzberg, to read that book, and yeah, and just see what's possible, again, because a lot of science fiction can get very repetitive and like, oh, again, here's a generation ship story, here's an alien invasion story, here's a first contact story, here's a mind-bending kind of psychological story, and those are great. Those aren't bad in themselves, but when you read something that feels like, this is, wow, this is different, this isn't like anything else I've ever read before, it's a little breathtaking. So I really loved that book, Beyond Apollo. And there you go. That's it. My best books, my top 21 science fiction books of 2025. I still want to do a video, just to let you know what's coming up. So I want to record a video. I've already got the list of my, let's see. I made a list of the best science fiction films of the decade. I made a list of, let's see. There's another list. Oh, the best science fiction books of all time. Yep. And then the best science fiction films of all time. Yeah, I think that's what I want. I think the best sci-fi films of all time is one of the videos I want to do. I've got my top 25, and then I have my honorable mentions, which is like another 25. And then I have some, I want to spend some time on that video talking about, like, what about Marvel, DC superhero films, and how does that fit or not fit in that list? It doesn't. What about like anime? How does it fit? Why is it separate? Why is it not, included? Things like Star Wars, Minority Report, why I hate it so much, Looper, why I don't understand why people love that film. I think it's horrible. Avatar, even Aliens by James Cameron. So I have a little commentary I want to make about some of those things. And then I also have one, this one I'm very interested in doing. I want to do a video on the top 10 best vintage science fiction comic books or graphic novels that you should own and that I do own. And so these are all, let me make sure, I think these are all my collection. Yes, I own all of these. Yes, I do. I own all of these, and I want to talk about why they're so great, why you should own them. Yeah. And then there's also some honorable mentions. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 other honorable mentions. So technically it's the top 14. best sci-fi comics, graphic novels you need to own. And so I'll do that. I'll do that one. And I'll do the best science fiction films of all time video coming up probably, if not next month, then certainly in January, right? All right. So anyway, thank you all for listening. And, I'd love to hear what you think. Like, what are your top 10, top 5 science fiction novels you read this year? Anything I missed, anything you'd like to recommend? I'm always open to suggestions. I'm always open. I keep a list in my pocket every time I go to a bookstore. I pull it out of looking for different books and stuff. So if you've got something you want me to add to my list, please let me know. And I guess otherwise, I'll see you next time. All right. Take care.